Well, welcome to Tim's Take, and today we're with Leah Gastonguay, a PhD student with Debbie Finke in entomology. Mm-hmm. So you have a very neat project looking at insects and cover crops. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people talk about how cover crops, you have more beneficial insects, and people tend to want to focus on pollinators, but there's a lot of different types of beneficial insects. But we always say, show us the data. So the USB has funded a project that you're working on to actually look here in Missouri, do cover crops make a difference in insects?
Yeah.
Good ones.
Yeah.
And bad ones. Mm-hmm. But good ones are what we hope they do. So what did you do?
Yeah, so for the last 3 growing seasons, so 2023, 2024, and 2025, my team and I sampled soybean fields across north central Missouri. I think it totaled to be like 50 fields across the last 3 years. So we were doing a lot of sampling, but we were working in fields that had cover crops during the winter or no cover crops. And we were trying to see how that affected the insect communities in those fields.
In the soybean fields?
In the soybean fields, yeah. So these are fields on a corn-soy rotation, with or without a cereal rye cover crop.
At least a cereal rye. It could be other things too.
Yeah, most of the farmers we worked with used cereal rye. A couple of farmers had like cereal rye mixtures with some brassicas thrown in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the majority were cereal rye. But
you had the non, so you could compare.
Yes, we had fields with and without cover crops. So. And
you looked at the soybeans all summer then.
Yeah, so if possible, we tried to sample when the cover crops were still in the ground. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then we sampled at least 5 times in each field while the soybeans were growing, which was really cool.
All right. And you looked at all different types of insects.
Yeah, so we use sweep net sampling, which is like, you kind of think about an entomologist running around a field with a butterfly net. That's what that is. Uh-huh. And we also used pitfall sampling, which is when you bury plastic cups into the ground. And that's a way of catching the insects that are present on the ground and not necessarily on the foliage, which sweep sampling would help us get the insects on the foliage. Pitfall sampling helps us get insects on the ground. So we used those 2 techniques to understand what insects were present in each type of field.
So then you had to take that home back to the lab and ID them.
Oh yeah, and the pitfall traps were so stinky because they're plastic cups full of soapy water, and we leave them out for a week. So when it's like 80 or 90 degrees and you pick it up out of the ground and it's been sitting out in the field for a week, it's got like floating bugs and worms and stuff in it. But yeah, we took all of that back and the contents of the sweep net sampling, which we would dump into plastic bags. We took that all back to the lab, and I've had some really awesome undergraduate students working on going through all the samples, which has been really helpful. And we're almost done with the last summer's worth of data. Mm-hmm. So soon I'll have all of that data.
So what have you found the first couple of years?
Yeah. So our results from 2023, preliminary results, I should say, we found that fields that had cover crops had less stink bugs, which are a pretty common pest in soybean fields, less pod damage, which I didn't talk about yet, but we also collected soybean pods from each field, and then we assessed them for any damage, which we considered like wrinkling, shriveling, or discoloration damage. So fields that had cover crops had less damaged pods, which was really cool to see. And then we also found in 2024, I just did some data analysis for that fields with cover crops had more pollinators and significantly less herbivores than fields without.
Herbivores are what?
So herbivores are insects like stink bugs that would be feeding on and damaging soybean pods. Oh. So I just...
Would grasshopper be an herbivore?
Yeah, so I lumped herbivores as like grasshoppers, crickets, leafhoppers, plant bugs, stink bugs, Japanese beetles. So it seems like there's less of those in fields that had cover crops, which is really cool.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So stink bugs, as well as your your ones that feed on.
Yeah, anything that's feeding on the plant.
Less with cover crops.
Yes.
But more beneficials or pollinators or what?
I found more pollinators.
Pollinators, okay.
In those fields with cover crops. I'm not sure exactly why that's happening because cereal rye doesn't have, a flower. So I need to really think about what's going on here.
So a pollinator would be...
So pollinators, we grouped pollinators as honeybees, bumblebees, any miscellaneous bees, and then like pollinating flies, like syrphid flies.
You love those flies, don't you?
I do love syrphid flies. They have a special place in my heart.
You did some studies on those.
Yeah, that was like my original graduate project. And
right.
They're just so hard to study. So I kind of had to pivot away from them and work more with beneficial insects broadly.
Now, so pollinators also can be your beetles and such, can't they?
Yeah. There are pollinating beetles. And from these sweep samples and pitfall samples, we got hundreds of different types of insects. And just for the sake of time, I kind of just focused on the more common pollinators. So like what we think of like bees and pollinating flies. But if I wanted to, I could also group in some beetles.
Do you think it could be the habitat that you're creating with the cover crop? That's why you're getting more of the bees, for example? Yeah,
I mean, that could be a possibility. Instead of just leaving the ground bare and uncovered, cover crops, maintain a habitat during the winter months and more structural diversity. So something could be happening there.
And we're probably, if we're going to have cover crops, we're not going to be tilled. So we're not losing those habitats that way too. Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'm not... Each farmer that I work with, farms their fields the way that works best for them.
Sure.
So I'm not sure if they're tilling or not. But yeah, it's a lot of people like to pair planting cover crops with no till.
Right.
So that could be what's happening.
And probably some of the cover crops were killed earlier than others.
Yeah. So because basically how I got these fields was you and other people gave me some names of farmers and they were like, oh, they would probably be interested in having you sample their fields. So I cold called farmers each year and was like, hey, can I sample your fields this year? And so, I didn't really have say in like how they were planted, when the cover crops were planted or terminated, the species of cover crop used, anything like that.
Did it make a difference on when they were terminated? Like if you got to let them get bigger, did you get more?
Yeah, I haven't looked at that yet, but I think that the longer you leave cover crops in the ground, the more benefits you can get from them. And especially if you have a flowering cover crop like a brassica or something like that.
And brassica meaning like your tillage, your radishes and turnips and also even like canola. Or
I think canola is a common one used in cover crop mixtures, at least with the farmers I was working with. If you're letting those grow long enough where they're flowering, then they're having that added benefit of providing floral resources. So for pollinators who feed on nectar or pollen.
Because I've grown a lot of cover crops and I use like hairy vetch and Austrian winter pea and crimson clover, and I see a lot of bees on those.
Yeah, those are good ones to find bees on.
And can a bee find that lone flower out there, or does it need a mass of flowers?
That's a great question. I mean, it would definitely be harder for an insect to find a flower if it's in just like a sea of,
of cereal rye.
Yeah. And so I think, more flowers is better and maybe more diversity of flowers. So there's people exploring like the role of diverse cover crop mixes. Maybe you've done some research with that, but in bringing in pollinators and providing resources for them.
Yeah, because the shape of the flower makes a difference on the insect if they're going to be able to use it or not.
Right. Yeah. So like flowers with really like deep corollas or, really tubular sort of flower shapes are good for like butterflies and insects with really long tongues. And then like shorter, smaller flowers are good for smaller insects like syrphid flies. But then we have like bees, like honeybees that feed on a lot of different types of flowers. And yeah.
But one thing I noticed was that the bumblebees like red clover in pastures, whereas our honeybees like the white clover.
Yeah.
Because that's probably the different flower shape and size.
Maybe. I don't know anything about that, but that would be a cool research question.
All right.
Ask. Yeah. Next research project.
That's right. That's right. Well, good. So by getting less stink bugs and other herbivores that feed, and we get better seed quality then, because stink bugs actually pierce the pod.
Yeah, so they have a straw-like mouth part, and so they pierce through the soybean pod and suck the juices out of the soybean. And so if you open a seed pod that has been fed on by a stink bug, the beans are a little shrivelly and kind of weird looking, and I don't know that they're really useful after that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
They would go right through the combine.
Yeah.
If they did wind up in the bin, you might get docked for them because you have poor quality. But you also have to worry, okay, if I spray an insecticide to kill these herbivores, but I'm also knocking out my beneficials too, aren't I?
Yes, yeah. So a lot of insecticides are broad spectrum. And so, if you're spraying to kill one type of insect, you'll probably be killing other insects that might otherwise control your pests. So it's good to be very conscientious when you're applying those things.
Did you find any beneficial insects that maybe feed on the herbivores?
Yeah, so we had like assassin bugs.
So assassin bug is a good bug?
Yes, they sound kind of scary, but yeah, they're great. They're another type of bug that has like a straw-like mouth part, but they use that to feed on insects.
Oh my!
So they're predators. Yeah. So they can eat stink bugs. There's some parasitoids that can help control stink bugs. There's other things present in soybean fields.
Now, parasitoid. What's that, dude?
Parasitoid. So these are insects, usually flies or wasps, that lay their eggs on or inside a host insect, and a lot of the times that host insect is what we consider a pest. So if a parasitoid wasp lays their eggs on like stink bug or stink bug eggs, their eggs will hatch, feed on the stink bug, kill the stink bug, and then emerge and start the cycle again. So they're really helpful in non-chemical methods of biological pest control.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you see a difference in those?
I haven't looked at those. So that's something that I need to do.
Because with the lower herbivores, we want to know why. That's always the question.
Exactly. Yeah, and so in the fields where I saw lower herbivore populations, I didn't see a significant effect of cover crops on predator populations. So I have to figure out what's happening there. With parasitoids, they're pretty tiny and hard to identify, especially after you've hit them with a net super hard, like while you're collecting them. So I don't have like the species of parasitoids information on that. So, but that would be really cool to figure out like what's going on in those fields. And
you said the follow traps, the traps that they just kind of tooling along, and also they fall into it. Then what are they feeding on then?
Yeah, so pitfall traps collect a lot of ground beetles and dung beetles or carrion beetles and ants. So those insects feed on like weed seeds, sometimes crop seeds, and like slugs and other ground dwelling like pests. So we found in fields that had cover crops, the pitfall traps caught a lot of ants. And we also set up another experiment where we built what we called seed traps, which are just a 4-inch square ceramic bathroom tile. And then we binder clipped a piece of sandpaper on top of that and glued 2 types of weed species, pigweed and ragweed, which are common in soybean fields. And we set those out into the field. And the seed traps were either covered with a mesh lid, so insect predators couldn't get to them, or they were uncovered and accessible to predators. And so we found that in fields with cover crops, there were more seeds taken off of those seed traps than in fields without cover crops. And like I said before, we had more ants in the fields with cover crops. So we think that ants might be responsible for increasing the weed seed removal off of those traps. And so what this means is that in fields with cover crops, there's more weed seed predation, which can be good for farmers and hopefully reduce the need for herbicides.
It is, because we have noticed that, especially pigweeds, and that we have a lot less pressure with our cover crops, following our cover crops.
Yeah, that must also be because they're taking up space and nutrients, and so those weeds can't establish as well too. I don't know, but that's cool. and also the shade. Oh yeah,
because some of them need shade, light to germinate. Mm-hmm. So that helps also.
That's cool.
But reducing the seed number, that's good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But we could have some problems with that though. If I overseeded my cover crops, and it doesn't rain and they're sitting there, that means the insects could start feeding on those also, couldn't they? Right.
You're feeding the ground predators, but maybe you want to. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe you want to boost their numbers.
Well, I think we just got to be cautious when we overseed our cover crops that we do right before rain. Mm-hmm. So the seeds go ahead and germinate and start growing and don't become food for the ants and the crickets and everything else.
Right. Yeah.
So we always got to keep that in mind. Do you notice a difference along the edge versus out in the middle of the field, or did all about the same type of insects?
That's a great question. So we did sample moving from the edges of soybean fields into the field. So we had transects set up where we would sample at 2 spots in the edge of the field. And the edge would either be kind of like a grassy area, which is what we typically see around agricultural fields, or the edge would be like a tree line, or it would be like a native habitat planting. And then we continued the transect by sampling at 0, 10, 20, and 30 meters into the field. And I actually haven't looked at the data on this yet, but I'm expecting there's going to be a difference in the insects that we find really close to the edge of the field versus in the middle of the soybean field. So I don't have results yet, but soon.
Because you do have the interaction between the edge.
Yes.
And that's a whole habitat for them also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a lot of different insects that hang out in tree lines and obviously native habitat plantings compared to just kind of grassy or sandy edges that don't have a lot of diversity. But
you are seeing it out in the middle of the field too, these changes in herbivores and such.
Yeah, I think we will be.
That's good. All right. Now, you did also have another part of this study where you were looking at refuges.
Yes.
Where you have native plantings intentional to try to attract more insects.
Yes.
But that didn't always result in a difference out in the field, did it?
No, and so that's why I didn't bring it up before, but
I did.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. But yeah, in addition to sampling fields grown with and without cover crops, we also sampled fields grown with and without adjacent native habitat plantings. And I just haven't found much significant results with the native habitat plantings. I don't think that's because these aren't working. We didn't have many fields that had the habitat plantings. I think about a third maybe of our fields had native habitat plantings around them. And they varied in size and species makeup and
age.
And age, yeah.
It takes 3 or 4 years for those to become mature.
Yeah.
So that can make a difference too.
Yeah, and we had some pretty awesome, really big native habitat plantings, and some pretty small, new ones. But yeah, that's going to require some extra work on my end to try to parse out those results.
And it could be a different insect species too.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Or it could be you also have the predators for these insects.
Yeah. So there's some research to suggest that native habitat plantings increase the presence of insect predators, which can help control pests, and insect pollinators, which can help, boost crop production, even though soybeans don't rely on pollinators to reproduce. But I am not finding evidence of this yet. But like I said, I don't think that it's because these plantings aren't working. I just think that this is a more complicated kind of experimental design, and I just need to really figure out what's
Right.
happening.
And different species too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's what you got to consider too. What different species are you seeing out there? But I think the take home is with cover crops, you're getting less of the harmful insects like stink bugs.
Yeah.
Your herbivores, also the ones like your leaf feeding and your pod feeding insects. You're getting less of those too.
Yes.
And it's throughout the field, which is really important. Oh, one thing that the United Soybean Board had an interest in was slugs. Did you see many slugs?
Yeah. So when we developed this project, we were looking at insect herbivores and slugs, which aren't an insect, but are an herbivore.
They're a mollusk, aren't they?
I think so, yeah. But our first year, we did not find any slugs. Like, I think maybe 1 or 2. And then in the following years, we've been looking for slugs, but we just haven't seen them. So, yeah, too few slugs to ask questions about them.
And slugs are going to be more in the wet conditions.
Yeah, and I think there's an assumption that with more cover crops in a field, there's more slugs, but we just couldn't find them because they like moist, wet habitats. And so having cover crops in the winter and spring kind of makes it like a perfect environment for them.
Right.
But yeah, we couldn't find them.
I've had some soybean stands in continuous cover crops that look beautiful. When they come up, I come back out in a couple of weeks. What happened?
What year was that? Do you know?
Of course not. I can't remember.
Was it maybe? I'm just wondering if like the reason why I haven't found slugs is because maybe just like the last 3 years they haven't been particularly bad.
This was probably 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. Then also what we look at is vole damage, which is more like a rat.
Yeah, we had some of those in our fields.
Did you really?
Yeah, and we actually think they might be responsible for eating some of those seeds off of our seed traps because we didn't control for them. And we saw quite a few of them just around, and they left droppings on some of our traps.
So that is a hazard with continuous cover using it, that you can get more vole damage and things have to be done for those. And just like with slugs in the right conditions, we can get that. Yeah, just have those cool, wet conditions that we really haven't had in the last few years.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have one this year.
Yeah, I'm interested to see.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Leah. And we'll wrap up this part of Tim's Take, and we'll take off next time.